Digital 410 Productions proudly presents the What's the Scuttlebutt podcast with your hosts Dodd Abernathy, Jeff Copsetta, and Henry Sledge.
What's going on, everybody? It's another episode of the What's the Scuttlebutt podcast, your favorite World War II based podcast. And we were off last week, but we're back tonight. And joining us, as always, from Texas is Jeff Copsetta. And, of course, from Alabama, Mr. Henry Sledge. Jeff, how are you doing tonight, sir?
Great, man. I wanted to say happy 3-year friend-versary to you.
Oh,
Met you 3 years ago.
Facebook remind you of that?
No, it reminded my wife of that.
Oh, so your wife reminded you of it. That's the hierarchy of Facebook. I didn't remind you because I rarely go on Facebook other than to post. But happy 3-year anniversary to you too, fella. So I was basically like 4 days early when I posted that montage on Instagram the other day, huh? I could have played that off like I planned it that way, but I didn't. I just was looking for something to post on the...
No, I think we wrapped out there. I think it was like the 17th or 18th of March.
So I just happened to pull that out at the right time.
Yeah, I guess so.
It's amazing how much a lot of us changed in those 3 years. Going back and looking at that photo of the four of us sitting in front of that U-Haul truck that night on Matt Lachey.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we were just talking about that, of course, a couple weeks ago when I saw Josiah. That was the first thing when I saw RJ coming out of the hotel. We were getting to check in, and he goes, "Hey, I'm going to get you guys a nice room with a balcony so we can make it look like somebody's peeing on Josiah again."
Henry, how are you doing, sir?
Doing fine. Doing just fine here in central Alabama. Honing in on my son's spring break, so we're going to hit the beach next week.
So your kid's spring break starts next week?
Yes.
My daughter's is this week, so our school district apparently is about a week ahead of yours. Friday was her first day, but the teachers had in-service day, and so today is the actual full-blown spring break. So Carrie's off work, the kid's off work, me not so much, but that does kind of put me in a pickle where they want me to get off early so I can try to go out and do things, but it doesn't always go as planned, but anyhow. So Jeff, you had a pretty exciting weekend. You've been in the planning stages. You guys decided, hey, before this big event, let's just go ahead and remodel this joint. And so how did that all work out for you?
It finally came together, like I said. Tomorrow, the students here go back to school. Today was like a teacher in service day, so I could catch up on grading and everything. There wasn't a whole lot of break in my spring break. Starting last Saturday, it was okay. We're down to the nitty gritty. D-Day -7 coming up to the 30th annual Bluebonnet Airshow, and of course that's the day I picked to reopen the museum that's been closed for 2 months. And in some ways, I got a lot further than I thought I would. And then looking back, once it's hard to picture what I wanted until you see a couple thousand people go through it in one day. So I know what I need to change. I know what I need to freshen up. But man, it was awesome. So last year we broke our record in 29 years for attendance at 4,100 people. That's not a big venue at all, 4,000. But we're a small little air show, and I said it a few times in my presentations on Saturday, like, hey, thanks for coming to the biggest little air show in Texas, because we really do. We put on a great air show. And this year we really harped on some more ground acts, from our living history group here at Company B. So we had to do multiple ground acts, weapon demonstrations, things like that. I had a surprise tribute presentation at the end that I'll talk about here in a minute. And, we pushed out a lot more social media wise. In fact, the air show coordinator now has a TikTok account. Don, you'd appreciate that.
Woo!
Because I told him, he's like, man, we're pushing a lot on Facebook. And I was like, dude, that's great.
Facebook's dead though.
It's kind of, like if you're trying to attract kids and talk about the things that we're doing for kids different this year, Facebook's not the platform unless you're hoping that their grandparents will tell them when they're on their Facebook,
Well, it's
sorry,
not only that, but not to get too mild down into the tech thing, but the reason Facebook is losing its ass and its stock is plummeting. About 7 months ago, Apple's phones actually made a huge change to their users' privacy, which as far as what sort of information it allows third-party apps to track. And one of the things it did is it locked down a lot of the stuff that Facebook would use to track people's browsing habits so they can turn around and sell advertising revenue. And Google said, "Hey, that's a pretty good idea, except for we'll still allow our stuff to track it." And so basically, Android, which is owned by Google, and Apple, they have both put in this new security, kind of preventing our phones from spying on us so much. I mean, we've all been there where you'll be talking to your wife in your car about, "Hey, let's go get some pumpkin pie," and then you're on Facebook, "The best place to buy pumpkin pie in Central Texas." Like, huh?
Yep.
And so they've cracked down on that. And it has had such a major impact on Facebook. I think I was reading this morning, again, over the weekends, their stocks have plummeted where like their employees are hauling ass going to other tech companies. So when I say Facebook's dead, and I don't mean it only as in young kids aren't using it as much, which they're not, but as far as using it as a form of advertising, which we've taught in the past, not only now are they not getting the advertisement revenue they wanted, but now they're going to go as far as preventing people from, like us, having our content seen for free. They're going to start forcing, more and more pages like the What's the Scuttlebutt podcast and our quote unquote business pages. They're going to start forcing us more and more to try to pay for people to see our views. And so it's just dying on the vine. So it's probably a good thing they got a TikTok.
Yeah. And, like I said, I run the little Instagram page as best I can to just kind of help get some more action out there. And of course, thankful that I get to talk about a lot on the podcast here because, there's a lot more people listening to this podcast than I realize. I'm starting to get a lot more followers from the UK and things like that, it's just really cool. It's cool how we're all connected. So last year, 4,100, this year, 5,660. We were just not prepared for a huge increase like that. I mean, we were hoping to break the record. We had kind of joked around, oh man, if we hit 5,000, that'd be great. And yeah, we went well over 5,000.
By 2 p.m., Jeff was scrambling to get 3 more porta potties on site.
Yeah, we had plenty of those because we kind of learned that lesson from last year. We like quadrupled the amount of food vendors. We cut out the car show only because that's the only real estate we had to put a huge food court. But I did manage to, I got a buddy that brought his DeLorean. I brought my DeSoto out there and just had a guy just happened to have a 67 Mustang on his trailer going somewhere. And he was like, "Hey, I thought y'all usually do a car show." Like, "No, not this year, but what do you got?" "Okay, bring it in." And he was just, as pleased as could be to come park next to it and hang out for the day. And then I pulled some resources from some local military vehicle groups here, had about 12 vehicles that range from M151, M37s, all the way up to 5 tons. Had a Bosnian BOV, just all kinds of stuff like that. And we had, it was great. The biggest thing I was proud of though, is have a contact with somebody that we've talked to quite a bit. We're going to get her on an episode one of these days, but she's one of the movers and shakers with Operation Meatball. Travels the world with these World War II vets as kind of their part of their entourage, and she's just been doing this as far as I know her whole adult life. So she's got some amazing stories. She's known hundreds of vets, and she's down in San Antonio, not too far away. So reached out to her, said, "Hey, if you could get me a couple guys that would like to come out," and she told me the morning of, she goes, I'm just laughing at how this is snowballing. She said, "I think I've got like 10 World War II veterans that are coming on this bus with us."
Nice.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah, and I think we had 2 others that were fairly local as well, and one out of Houston. So it was incredible, and I'll show you. My son had a great idea to have his liner signed by all the World War II vets that he met there that day, and then. And it's a good liner there, Don.
Nice.
I know you're looking.
No, I was looking to see if you were lucky enough to have a silver Sharpie, but black works as well.
Yeah, it is. It is what it is.
Yeah.
But
no, it's still a great idea.
Yeah, it was great. And then one of his other buddies that was dressed had the inside of his steel pot signed by the same guys as they were talking to him. So it was really great. And The last tribute we did, like I said, I kind of held off to the end, but harp a lot on the Greatest Generation, and we had General Patton out there talking, and we demoed a couple World War II weapons, and
Denny Nail was out there.
What's that?
Your buddy Denny Nail.
Denny Hare, yeah.
Denny Hare, sorry.
Yeah.
Denny Hare.
Yeah.
Okay.
He came out and handed him the mic for 5 or 6 minutes to let him get everybody pumped up. Came out with the command car and the siren, and all that jazz, and
cool.
Had our Dillard sisters singing. So it was great. But at the end, like I said, I wanted to do kind of a one final send off before the A-10s came over and blew everything up. I said, we've been talking a lot about the Greatest Generation, but there was another generation that came after, and another generation of fighting men that had to answer the call, go to a faraway land, fight, bleed, and die. So I said, if you're a Vietnam vet or a Vietnam era vet, or if you know a Vietnam vet, this is for you. And turned around and had a buddy behind me with his Vietnam era flamethrower, just painting the sky with that thing, right there in front of everybody. And you could see the emotions running pretty deep. You could see all the Vietnam vets there, and just did a big send off to all those guys. And we had a couple guys there in Vietnam era uniforms, my son included. He looked like he just came off the set of Platoon, except he had my big yellow first cab patch on his first patterns there. But it was the best air show I've ever been to, because I got to be an integral part of it and also enjoy it. I've worked a lot of air shows lately. I don't, you don't get to like hang out, or I don't. When you go to an air show, I'm a big part of it. But I've never been that big a part of an air show and then still get to go walk over and hang out with my wife and hang out with the kids for a little bit, or talk to some of these World War II vets, shake their hands, tell me that for them that this was the best air show they'd ever been to.
Nice.
One of them was saying, man, this is just great. I couldn't imagine it any better. I'm shaking his hand, and there's a Marine Corps PBJ, B-25 banking like this for a photo pass right behind us.
I was about to ask you, what sort of air demonstrations did you guys have over there?
Yeah, so we actually started it off with that MiG-17, all but knocking everybody's socks off, coming in at like 600 miles an hour with afterburner on it. It was insanity. That was kind of the first aircraft that ooh and ah. But
I don't think people realize how loud jets are when they're flying that low. I mean, because I've been out at, Sun and Fun out here and a few of the air shows, and I'll be quite honest with you, like after day 3 and you're in there and it's 2 in the afternoon, and it's like, okay, enough with the jets. My head is killing me because they are loud. And after day 3, you're just like, okay.
We started off with it, and then we ended with the A-10s, but everything else was a prop job in between. The C-47, That's All Brother, was there.
Nice.
In fact, they had the jumpers come out of that with a big American flag coming down with an SNJ blowing smoke oil in circles around the jumper with the American flag while the Dillard girls are singing the anthem. So like couldn't be any cooler than that.
I was going to say, I don't care how many times you've seen it. There's nothing cooler than seeing a stick of 12 coming out of the back of one of those planes. It's just so damn cool.
Yeah, it was every bit of. It may have been bigger than that. It was a good size flag, but had some SNJ T6 type stuff. Had a C-45, BT-13, and then like I said, then the A-10s come in and do their thing where they look like they just hit the air brakes and then take off, and then pyro goes off everywhere. And then they do the honor flight where you see an A-10 banking with a bright shiny P-51 coming by everybody. That was kind of how the air show ended.
Hey, I saw a picture. Was the PBJ black?
It's a real dark blue.
Dark blue. Okay.
Yeah.
Where's that thing out of, man? That's awesome. They had a PBJ there.
Georgetown. About 30 minutes east of here. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they're really cool. And so when she goes up, they do like a Doolittle tribute.
Nice.
So they'll kind of talk about how important. And we had another B-25 that was supposed to be there, but canceled. But she flies over a couple times, and you see the Bombay doors open, and then all of a sudden, all this pyro goes off under it, and makes a few passes as they're kind of narrating about the Doolittle raid. and then she'll do a few photo passes where she's just standing on one wing. It's about as
Hmm.
slow as that airplane can fly past everybody. And
Wow.
Now,
yeah,
not
it
to
was just awesome.
not to get too behind the scenes, but it's not very often that people have the opportunity to talk to somebody who organizes air shows. When it comes to those pyrotechnics, does each playing group, quote unquote, have their own guy, or do you guys hire in somebody and they say, "Here's what we want to demonstrate"? And how does that logistics actually work out? Getting
Yeah.
those
So,
pyrotechnics
and
set
I
up.
mean, obviously, I couldn't speak for every air show,
Yeah,
but I have worked this one and then the one up in Dallas, the big one, Wings Over Dallas Air Show. And as far as I know, it's the same group of guys. They call themselves the Blasters, and they just do a tremendous job. I don't know. There could be air acts that maybe contract their own.
yeah,
That would be news to me because it's everything from the CAF aircraft that we're using that they're using the pyro for, like Devil Dog, the PBJ, and then the A-10s come in, and same thing. Then they're the Air Force demo team, but it's the blasters that are
sure.
blowing everything up. So yeah, the logistics is these guys just really know their job really well. They know their box. The pilot briefing is a very intense briefing the morning of, where everybody knows where the crowd line is, the max elevation, and all the different areas that they have even parallel to the runway in the event that they have an issue and they have to put down somewhere. We've got some pretty large lakes around us too. If that had to happen, to actually try to make a water landing, if that needed to be done. And then flip side of that, if we did have an issue where we catch stuff on fire, which happens probably every single time. I mean, we put in black, we do a prescribed burn the day before, try to burn out all that dead grass, that dry stuff. But it happens, wildfires happen, and we've got helos that can come in and dump out of one of the lakes and just, if they had to. So yeah, that's pretty much the logistics of it. Pretty cut and dry. They're just guys that really know their thing, and it's blasting caps, det cord, and diesel fuel.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's what you need for that
Yep.
black smoke is a lot of diesel fuel.
Yep. Yep.
Are you doing like the whole air show announcer thing too, or is there somebody who does that?
Yeah, no, we have a contracted announcer that I work very closely with.
Mm-hmm.
He does the majority of the air show narration of all the air acts. But then him and I, of course, so I did like 4 different presentations. So he brings me out pre-show to kind of introduce myself, talk about the museum, pump the crowd up for what they're going to see. He kind of runs that as a commercial throughout the air show. And then, like I said, brings me back on. So we just kind of, and then there was one time where we kind of did a little bit of a back and forth, hey, Jeff, tell, you open the museum today. What's some of the things that people could see there? What's your favorite artifact? What should they look for? Stuff like that. Just a little bit of narration, just to kind of, you can't just have an airplane land and or take off and then land and then another one's right behind it. Like you've got some fillers in there, and that's usually where my ground acts come in. But sometimes you got to stretch, or sometimes you got to condense, and that's the hardest thing from my perspective. When you're running a ground demonstration team at an air show, you can't say, okay, guys, here's the run of show. I need you, we're going to rally up at 10:40, 12:45, and 13:50. That's when we need to meet up, because everything is a sequence. The aircraft don't really have a hard time, because I know right after the first couple acts, we were about 6 minutes ahead of schedule, and you're going to kind of keep that pace unless somebody goes long. So you need to be able to it doesn't matter what the time says. If you follow this act and you see that act in the air, I better rally the troops and get weapons ready and get ready to grab a microphone and roll right through as if nothing ever happened. So,
yeah.
And I think that's a great example of things we've talked about in the past here when it comes to living history events and public reenactments. People think, oh, okay, you just go out there, you run around, shoot some blanks, fall down, and everybody goes home. No, it's kind of like a play. It is, in fact, a production. You have, and in your case, you have a ground show, you got an air show, you have trying to get people inside to see your displays and, everything you've just worked so hard 2 months doing that, it's more than just opening the gates and saying, "Come on in, have fun." It's a production.
Oh, absolutely. And we have a little saying within the squadron, it takes a village, and it certainly does, because just in our VIP tent, you're feeding 125 people plus all the all the World War II vets. We just kind of we let them come in there naturally, so that's a lot of other food that you're trying to prep for. All the other vendors, all the stuff that it takes to just line it. The logistics are unbelievable, and one person could not do it. It took a team of 50 or 60 of us probably to actually be able to run everything we did. And one of the really nice assets we have now is the cadet program that we just started in January. Well, officially in January. We pinned our first cadets in October, and then we pinned, I think, 4 or 5 more at the air show right at the start.
And he means pins them. He does the whole thing where he takes the bag off and punches it into their chest, and you can see it bleed through the T-shirt. And of course, there's liability disclaimers signed before the whole thing by the parents. But they're really into it over there in Texas. I'm telling you.
I wish, man. I still have scars in here, man. No joke. They're not allowed. I don't know. That's a forgotten thing, because I actually had an opportunity to pin one of my volunteers. He made staff sergeant at Fort Hood. It was great, but the new Army uniform, it's a little piece of Velcro that has the rank on it, right here in the middle. And attention to orders. He's at attention and everything, and I'm handed the little patch, and I just look at him in the eye, and I'm just holding, because he knows exactly what I'm thinking. Like, dude, this ain't nothing like how it used to be.
Yeah, you feel like you're putting a gold sticker, a gold star.
There you go. Exactly.
I saw this great TikTok video this morning. It was a side-by-side comparison of the first day of Marine Corps boot camp versus first day of the new, nicer Army boot camp. When they start with the Army, the drill sergeant comes on the bus. He goes, "Welcome on behalf of whatever camp it was. If you see anybody in this hat, this is a drill sergeant. The first thing, the last words out of your mouth will be yes, drill sergeant, or no, drill sergeant. Okay, when I say get off the bus, the women, just nice, just like I'm telling you, I want the ladies to get off. They're going to go on the vertical lines on the left. The men, you guys want to go in the vertical lines right. Paperwork's going to be in the left hand. Okay, you got 2 minutes to get off the bus." Because the Marine Corps, the bus is loaded. Kids are sitting in the aisle. They're on, the drill instructor goes off. He goes, "Welcome to Paris Island. Get the fuck off my bus. Get out there, stand." And it was completely like, holy hell. It was like, It was complete transition. And it was like, yep, there's a big difference between the newer modern Army boot camp versus the Marine Corps. It was hilarious.
Yeah, they called that the shark attack, man, because that's when you don't exactly know who your drills are at that point. You just know that you don't want maybe that guy or that big dude over there. You don't want them to be your drills. And usually they typically are. But, I thank goodness every day, looking back at the time that I served, that I got to experience that, because what an incredible transition it's been in such a short amount of time. And, you'd think, okay, over 20 years, everything changes. Like, okay, I'm sure the guys in the 60s and 70s, like, oh man, those guys had it easy, blah, blah. But I've never met, even non-vets have told me, I've sat at luncheons before, unit reunions. They're like, "I don't know how y'all did over there back then." These are guys that hung out in the jungles of Nam for 3 years. There's this commonality all the way through until about maybe 10 years ago, 5 years ago. I don't know what the transition was, but then and I have nothing in common with any of these guys that are serving today. It's so foreign.
We didn't talk about so much on this podcast, but there was 2 weeks ago, there was an article came out. I forget where it was published. I saw it through third party, but basically one of the commanders who heads up boot camp, I don't know if it's the Marine Corps or the Army, for sake of conversation, we'll say Army. And they're saying the problem they're having is not so much motivation, it's the physicality. These young kids, because, they're not allowed playing tackle football in school. Most of them, they don't go outside and climb trees like we used to. They're not falling down off their bikes as much as we used to. They're physically seeing that their bones are weaker than previous generations, where in following boot camp arenas where they would have the occasional...
They're doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah, well...
Don, I've heard that. Yeah, I've actually heard that, man.
Yeah, there's areas of boot camps where in Jeff's generation they would maybe twist an ankle or sprain a leg. They're literally seeing broken bones in areas in the same exact regiment where, they may have had 2 broken bones per, season, and now they're having 8 or 9. Like their bones are physically not as dense and not as durable because they didn't have the time between, kindergarten and high school where they're breaking bones riding bikes or playing football and all that. Their bone
And there's
density.
probably a lack of physical fitness too.
Yeah.
Can't do as many push-ups and all because they're just not as physically active.
Yep.
Yeah, and in all fairness, because I'm sure there's some younger cats listening to our podcast right now that probably shut off. Like, screw you guys,
No.
Yeah, I get it. In their defense, let me tell you, I did join a peacetime army.
Yeah.
I didn't have to be there, and what I mean by that is they didn't need me to be there. So the graduation rate was not high on purpose because we don't need you.
Yeah.
You got to earn it.
That's a good point.
I will say that. I mean, I know the cycle before me started, the platoon before me in the cycle that I was in started with 56. They graduated 17. We started in my platoon the following cycle, my cycle, we had 63, graduated 36. And then September 11th happened and you graduated 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, they needed boots on the ground. You push them through. It's somebody else's. It's somebody else's problem. And the transition happened, like I said, my basic training was 17 weeks long. It was from June to October. So put September 11th in there, wherever that was, week 8 or 9 or 10, whatever it was. Then we had a big squadron formation, right after that. It was like, and our squadron commander came out there, Lieutenant Colonel Honore, I'll never forget. He said, you don't beat them, don't starve them, don't touch them. You train them, and you graduated. And that started a whole different army because I had a whole new set of drills come in. I think I told you guys the story. They were all either fired or ended up in Leavenworth because of what they did. Whole new set of drills. And, they didn't touch us. We got 3 meals a day. Everything was great. And we went to war. So we've been at war ever since in some capacity. So I think now that's why you're seeing kind of this citizen army that we experienced. This is the army of like 1978. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
They don't need you. Nobody wants to be here now. So the only way they're going to keep you in is like, yeah, you're a girl. You want to have a ponytail and paint your nails and lipstick. No problem. So that's the army we're seeing. It's that peacetime, post-war. Everybody's burned out. The gritty soldiers are gone. Or they're like crusty old E9s. And you've got these young NCOs coming up through the ranks. You've got young officers. You've got company commanders that have probably never seen a day in combat. And they're fielding a company of Joes that, they're clueless at this point. And I'm not bashing today's army. I don't want anybody to think that.
Neither am I. But what I was going to say is I think it's going to be interesting to see how that changes in probably 4 to 5 years from now. Because I just started noticing now, it may be the fact that I just changed my membership from Planet Fitness, which I kind of consider cardio gym, to Crunch Fitness, which is more, muscle building and all that. But I was talking on What's in Your Head last week. I have seen, and it brings a smile to my face, to be honest with you. I have seen a staggering number, and I think it's a lot of these high school kids who, have heard so much bad mouthing about the generation before them, their brothers and sisters. I am seeing an inordinate amount of young cats, not even cats, but the girls. I mean, these girls are doing the squats, they're doing all like they look like CrossFit chicks, but they're like high school girls. And so there is a whole generation of young cats and girls who are just hitting that gym, and they're just in there every night. And so it'll be interesting to see, because everything ebbs and flows, right? The greatest generation, their kids were the hippies, and then the hippies' kids were the yuppies in the 80s, and then, my generation in the 90s with the grunge, and then things, every generation kind of rebels against the generation before them. And so it'll be interesting to see as this younger crew come through who are now getting tired of hearing about, fat Americans and this and that and everybody being lazy. It seems like more and more, and you see it on Instagram too, there's, especially amongst the women, a lot more of them are getting into the fitness stuff and just blowing it out. So it'll be interesting to see how that changes in another 5 years when that generation comes through.
I thought the same thing, because I look at kids like my son and his 2 best friends, that one of them was out there in a Wehrmacht uniform, and one of them was out there in a 5th Ranger Bat World War II uniform. Yeah, these are 15, 16, 17-year-old kids that are absolutely rebelling from that stereotypical kid today that just wants to play video games, never had to work for nothing. I know Henry's son isn't like that. I know my son isn't like that.
Sadly,
I
my
know your
daughter.
children.
No, my daughter is. We've been having major problems. No, literally, like we actually went on her Xbox the other day. Said, ask your friends if they would rather sit here or go out kayak fishing. She won't even go fishing. We had to put screen time on her Xbox because, like on spring break, she's like, it'll be noon, and she'll
Don,
already,
how old is your daughter?
she's 14. It'll be noon on Saturday, and she'll already have 11
I,
hours on the Xbox.
if
By
if I can
noon.
jump in with
Because
just a little bit of perspective here,
Yeah,
to
go ahead.
kind of, my son's 13, so he's a little younger than your son's, Jeff. But I am super proud of the kid because he's now. We at one time when he was 8, 9, 10, we would have to limit his screen time. Now the kid's racing mountain bikes.
Mm-hmm.
He's doing morning football workouts to play football next year. And he just started playing Joy League baseball. And I say Joy League because it's real laid back. He's not, he played hockey back when most of his friends were playing baseball. So, but he doesn't play ice hockey anymore. But
Speaking of dense
my
bones,
wife and I talk about the,
said, speaking of dense bones, grew up playing hockey. He's rugged.
Well, I mean, he would rather be, there's a creek across the road. He and his buddies will go run around over the creek, and he plays video games too. We don't forbid that, but it's like, it really is kind of cool to see the older he gets, the more into physical activities he seems to be. And so to your point, Jeff, I mean, I'm glad to see that. Don, maybe your daughter, like you guys said, things ebb and flow. There was a time when I thought, man, Jack will never do anything physical. He'll just be a video game kid. Fortunately, that was several years ago. So your daughter may.
Yeah, she was a little late
morph out
to
of
the
that.
party because, we did adopt her 3 years ago. Prior to that, she never had access to that. And so now she's late access
Okay.
to that. But it's like, kid, it's noon on Saturday. You've already been on Xbox for 11 hours. At noon. It's like, we got to do something about this. And so, but yeah, so that's been the struggle here. Henry, you
Yes.
attended the Libraries of America online class that we've been promoting here. How'd that go? The seminar, not class, but seminar.
Yeah, the webinar with Richard Frank and Elizabeth Samet, who was the editor of the trilogy volume that included my dad's book. And Elizabeth Samet teaches English at West Point. So that went really well. And in fact, Taco and I had a conversation about that. He's like, man, I was listening to it, Henry. I was expecting you to be on. I was like, no, I was never going to be part of that. That was really Elizabeth Samet's conversation, with Richard Frank. But I think it went really well. I waiting on the lobby card there visually before the event started, beautiful What's the Scuttlebutt podcast logo. And my name on it too, because I was kind of the one they contacted to help them promote the thing. But I hope our podcast got some good exposure out of that.
No, I'm sure it did, and I'm sure the numbers will reflect that. But yeah, I just wanted to touch up on that and see how that went. And
yeah, it was a good conversation. Went really well. My mom was watching from her place. And yeah, good conversation. I think it's, great to have my dad's book in the trilogy of Pacific War memoirs. So, yeah, it was a good thing, man.
I had another one of your pre-produced things going. I was actually going to open the show with it, but I don't think I loaded it, so we'll save that for next week. Let me do this, and then we'll get in a mail call. We haven't done a mail call in a while. So I was on, actually, we were off last week, so let me back up to last weekend. So last weekend I was on Netflix around midnight, and I saw the remastered Redux version of Apocalypse Now. I'm like, well, this might be a good watch at midnight. Now, I know it's 3 hours long, but it's midnight. I can go to bed at 3 in the morning. Little did I know. So I fire up Apocalypse Now, and I thought I had seen this movie. And apparently, much like everybody else, I'd seen clips, because there's a lot of it I hadn't seen, and even though it's the remastered, they only added 20 minutes to it. But I'm watching it. Okay. Enjoying it. Pausing. Okay, it's 1:30. Got a little bit of time to go. 2 o'clock. All of a sudden, it switches to 3 a.m. I was like, oh, damn, time change. I'm gonna have to finish watching this movie in the morning. I don't want to be up watching Apocalypse Now till 3:30 or 4:30 in the morning. But if you guys haven't seen, I know it's not World War II, but if you guys haven't seen that in a while or haven't seen it at all, it's an interesting take, and it blows your mind to how much Charlie Sheen looks like his dad. Because when Martin was his age, he looked just, Charlie looks just like his dad did when he was that age. But so that was last weekend. I got caught with my pants down when it came to the time change, which apparently they're trying to get rid of that. That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah.
Everybody, when I was growing up, was like, "Oh, it's so the farmers have more time." Actually, no, it's a carryover from World War II. It started in World War I. They activated it, and then after World War I, they got rid of it. Interestingly enough, World War II rolled around. The guy who came up with the idea for World War I presented it, and he said, "Hey, if I can get the pen, kind of like back in World War I when you guys sign it in the bill." So they sign it in the bill and to not give them the pen, but for whatever reason, and the whole reason we had it was, with a lot of the mandatory blackouts at night on the West Coast and the East Coast, they rolled it back so they can have more production time using daylight. But anyhow, for some reason, we never got rid of it. But this weekend, 2 nights ago, I was on Netflix and I saw a advertisement for this movie out of Denmark called Bombardment. Have you guys seen this?
I have not.
If you're not on Netflix a lot, I strongly suggest it. Now, here's the trailer for it. Beginning of it's a lot of just sound effects because it's a visual, but you'll get the gist. And it's actually a pretty interesting movie based on a story that I've never heard. And then I'll give you guys the background of the story in which it's based off of.
Sister in Copenhagen. There isn't much sky there, and it's mainly the sky he's afraid of.
Is it because you saw the dead people in the burning car? Is that why you don't speak?
I'm searching for God.
Teresa, God is everywhere.
But he can't be with everything that's happening.
The Gestapo is dangerously close to eradicating the Danish resistance.
We know you're a leading figure. Where are we? We're in the shell house. We're the human shield.
This mission is perhaps our riskiest mission yet. We're going to fly straight into the very center of a capital city and hit and destroy one single building. The target is the Gestapo headquarters in the center of Copenhagen.
This is the Netflix miniseries based on Operation Carthage, which we'll get into momentarily. The events are true, but I think this is one of those movies where they kind of made up the character of Henry and Sister Teresa just to kind of add some interest to the storyline, to give it a little first-hand account, kind of build a character to make you feel more at heart for them. I'm going to be very vague about this because I don't want to give any of the plot points, but as you heard them say, young Henry was being sent away because he was afraid of the sky. Kind of watching this, it's a Danish movie, and it's one of those foreign movies which I think is great. All the RAF pilots are speaking English, all the Germans are speaking German, all the Danish people are speaking, what language are they speaking in Denmark? Anyhow, the reason I know it's not English is because they have English overdubs on it. But it's almost like the writers are kind of sticking a little bit to the RAF because there's an incident at the beginning which triggers Henry to be so traumatized he can't talk. They're kind of setting up for a pattern of maybe RAF pilots not being super accurate, or maybe they're just kind of building the bridge to what actually did happen in real life and what the movie is strongly based around. But go check that on Netflix. It's a very good movie. It's called Bombardment. But here is Operation Carthage, which the movie is based around. On March 21st, 1945, a British air raid on Copenhagen, Denmark during the Second World War killed 145 civilians. The target of the raid was the Gestapo headquarters in the city center. The Gestapo headquarters was used for storage of dossiers and the torture of Danish citizens during interrogations. Now, the Gestapo knew that the RAF and the Danish were talking about bombing this facility. And the Gestapo, being such great guys that they are, they figured, and they put out a press release, hey, we're going to take all the Danish prisoners, i.e. 35 of them, and put them in the attic of our building. So if you were to bomb us, you're going to kill 35 Danish prisoners. They made it what they're quote-unquote human shields, and they cover that in the movie. The raid was requested by the members of the Danish resistance movement to free imprisoned members and to destroy the records of the Gestapos and to disrupt their operations. The RAF initially turned down the request because it was too risky due to the location in the crowded city center and the need for low-level bombing, but they approved the raid in early 1945 after repeated requests. Once the approval has been given, planning for the raid took several weeks. Scale models of the large buildings and the surrounding city were built and used by pilots and navigators for preparations of the very low-level attack. Now, Henry, I was thinking of you and Jeff both when I was watching this because they got some very cool in-cockpit footage from the RAF pilots. And I think trying to look at what one, you know me, I'm not mosquitoes. What was the RAF mosquito?
Yeah, the de Havilland mosquito.
And that's a weird one because the seats are staggered. So the pilots in the front kind of left, and then the navigators kind of staggered behind him, but to the right. And it almost looked like there was a spot. And the two main characters, I'm pretty sure they shot in a real mosquito, and then maybe some of them were computer, or they could have all been real. The flight footage is great in it. The overall effects in it are quite brilliantly done. So I was thinking of you two the whole time watching. Like, oh, they got, them being the Air Corps fanatics, they got to check this out. Let's see.
You saw this on Netflix?
It is on Netflix. It's called The Bombardment. Okay. And
I have not. I'm intrigued at some cool in-cockpit stuff from a mosquito.
Yep. The aircraft flew in 3 waves of 6 aircrafts with 2 reconnaissance Mosquito B-4s from the Royal Air Force Film Production Unit to record the results of the attack. There is a short film taken by the RAF which is used on other online documentaries, blah, blah, blah. 30 RAF Mustang fighters gave air cover from German aircraft, and these were also attacked by These also attacked anti-aircraft guns during the raid. The force left RAF rest field in the morning, and it reached Copenhagen around 11 a.m. The raid was carried out at rooftop level, and they show this in the film. They're literally flying right over the rooftops. During the first attack, a mosquito hit a lamppost, damaging its wing, and the aircraft crashed into the Jean d'Arc School about 1.5 kilometers from the Gestapo headquarters, which was the target. And this is where the crux of the movie comes in. Several bombers in the second wave accidentally hit the school because they saw the smoke from the plane crash, thinking it was the smoke from the Gestapo building from the first raid of the bombardment. Because before they fly in the city, they're all saying, okay, after everybody checks in, as happened during the time, radio silent. So they couldn't, crack radio silence and say, hey, don't hit that target. The building that housed the Gestapo was destroyed. 18 prisoners were freed, and the Nazi anti-resistance activities were disrupted. As I said before, part of the raid was mistakenly directed against the nearby school. The raid caused 125 civilian deaths, including 86 school children and 18 adults in the school. Kind of like Pearl Harbor, but without the romance. Once again, I'm sure the character of Sister Teresa was made up and the storyline of Henry was made up, but it wasn't unbelievable. It was actually, at least the Henry part was very well done. The Teresa part gets very suspenseful at the end, but go out and check it out. It's a great movie, especially if you've burned through all your World War II movies. And it's always nice to see a World War II movie done in an area which we would all consider foreign land, not American production, not even, it's nice to see other countries version of Hollywood in their aspect and how they do World War II films. So once again, it is on Netflix. It is called The Bombardment. You'll know it because the screen capture shows two kids completely covered in debris dust, very reminiscent of 9/11. So you'll know the icon when you see it. And,
Okay.
And so check that out. And one more thing. Here's kind of a cool update. You know, when it comes to World War II news, it's usually, old school stuff. But every once in a while, a modern day piece of news comes out. And this came out back on February 13th. A San Diego sailor killed at Pearl Harbor has been finally identified. U.S. Navy sailor killed in Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor has been identified after 80 years thanks to the advanced DNA and forensic analysis, military officials said. The Department of Defense announced on Thursday that the remains of Navy storekeeper First Class Harry E. Walker was identified last spring. San Diego reporter, the San Diego Tribune reported, Walker, a San Diego native, will be buried in California next month. The 36-year-old was assigned to the USS Oklahoma when he died on December 7th, 1941. Aerial attacks on USS Naval Base in Hawaii. More than 400 of the battleship's crew were killed. It took several years to recover and bury the remains. Military identified 35 of them in 1947, but new forensic technology became available in 2015, and other remains have been tested. In total, more than 2,300 U.S. troops stationed at Pearl Harbor lost their lives during the attack, which led to the United States' entry into World War II. But finally, after 80-some-odd years, it's nice that his family can at least get, closure.
Closure, yeah.
And, have a funeral and, a headstone to go to and a place to remember their lost family member.
That's an interesting piece of news.
And interesting, thanks to this listener. We've got a mailbag, and if you guys want to email us, reach out to us, email us at mailcall@wtspworldwar2.com, or as this gentleman did, info@d-410.com. That is info@d-410.com. Subject is World War II Japanese flag. This is one of those new listeners that Henry was talking about, not this particular person, but he was telling me he knows some new listeners who are actually going back and listening to our entire archive. And apparently this gentleman did too, because a while back, I think, Henry, you were talking about a Japanese flag, or maybe I was talking about the Japanese flag that I forgot I had purchased on eBay. And then one day I was like, oh, there's a Japanese flag in here. And I was talking about how the eBay person, father, brought it back because they were stationed in Japan after the war. But anyhow, so this person was listening to that episode. Guys, I recently discovered your podcast, and I have been listening to them pretty much every day. I'm a World War II and general history buff, so your content really appeals to me. I'm listening to episode 90, and one of you mentioned you had a Japanese flag from World War II. My dad was a World War II vet as well, and so were several of my uncles. To cut to the chase, we had some World War II souvenirs in our home, one of which was a World War II Japanese flag. I played with this flag when I was a kid in the 60s, and somehow it survived my countless ballets. I never really knew how it came to be in our household. By the time I found it again, my dad and my uncles had been all deceased. I started to research these flags, and a link popped up on my Facebook page for the Odin Society. They do research on these flags, and they try to find the surviving families so they can be reunited with them. I'm assuming he's talking about the flags that have the Japanese writings of all the members of their battalions. I contacted them and eventually sent the flag in to them to see if they could identify and return it to any of the surviving family members. They were able to translate the writing, and I found the soldiers' names and where they had been killed. Here is a brief excerpt of what they found, and he basically lists the soldiers' names, which I'm not going to even try to read. Needless to say, I'm very pleased with the outcome. Had it been the other way around, I can only imagine my feelings having an item like this returned to me and my family after all these years. Anyway, I'm not saying one way or the other what you should do. I just thought I'd let you guys know where you or your listeners can find information if any of you guys have Japanese flags with Japanese writing on it. To which I replied back to him, as I just stated, my flag in particular was a bring home flag from the person on eBay. There's no writing on it. Her father had just been stationed over there and bought a flag at a store and brought it home. and I explained to them that your flag was brought home by your father. But I told them I'd read the story so that if anybody listening has a Japanese flag with writing on it, to go check out the Odin Society, and they can help you identify the names on the flags, and if you're interested, potentially help you return it to the survivors of a family member listed on that flag. You guys got anything else you want to add before we wrap up this episode?
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking about, hey, what do we want to mention or plug?
Sure.
Is that
or anything? I mean,
yeah. Well, I'm within 100 pages of finishing up Tower of Skulls, Richard Frank's book on the Asian Pacific War, 1937 to 1942. That's been really, really good book. Not a quick read. Not a quick read at all. So I think my next, well, I've got a couple ideas on what I'm going to read next.
What are you thinking?
Well, I may do the Library of America trilogy because I want to read Kernon's volume, or his memoir, and then Samuel Hines' Flights of Passage, his memoir, because he was a Marine aviator. So it'd be kind of interesting, and I'd probably reread with the old breed too, to kind of see within the context of those three. It'll be kind of good to get that perspective.
Yeah, I think I was telling you the other day, I think after I'm finally getting wrapped up on this Peleliu book, and I think primarily just to go into it again and maybe to help provide some content for the podcast, I'm going to probably go back into the books that I bought, that I started and never finished, on the Merrill Marauders, just because, we've talked about the Edson Raiders here, and the Merrill Marauders, right. The whole concept of that came out of the same meeting that generated the Raiders. But yes, I'm thinking I'm probably going to dig into those books again, and just to provide some content and some fresh ideas here. How about you, Jeff? What have you been reading?
Yeah, so the last episode we did, I was reading Bomber Boys, which I'd finished up, that was really great. That was just for kind of like an amateur author, I guess, to be able to put together those five stories so well was just really cool. So I've switched over. This is the next one, Hell's Angels. This is by Jay Stout, who happens to be he was an Air Force fighter pilot himself. I want to say he was a fighter pilot, Desert Storm era, I want to say, in the 90s. But really good history of the 303rd Bomb Group. But it doesn't read like a unit history. It's really well done. And he said when he attacked this particular bomb group, he didn't want to just focus on, the flyboys. He wanted to focus on, when we think of a bomb group, we think of 4 bomber squadrons, right? So this particular one is 358, 359, 360th, and like the 427th heavy bombardment. But he's talking about the transportation battalion, the quartermasters, the motor pool guys. So you kind of see as he's pulling little bits from these guys as they're still in the States, and your support staff goes that these guys were stationed at Molesworth. So your support guys are showing up first. And then what I found really fascinating, and I've read a lot about B-17s, and I had never known, besides Boeing and besides Vega, or Lockheed Vega, Douglas built a good amount of B-17s during the war. I had no idea. And of course, the memorable thing about it is that one of the particular guys he's talking about, he didn't want a Douglas built B-17. He said they weren't even finished. They were just garbage.
Wow.
And obviously towards the end of the war, I'm sure they got a lot better, but this is very early stages of the air war in Europe in like November of 42. So really early stages. So I found that really fascinating. And then also, I did not want to end this episode without a huge, huge thank you to Don for sending this to me. If you can see it, greetings from England.
Oh, that's nice.
Beautifully stitched,
Take a high def photo of that so we can put it on the website.
I totally will, man. And I wanted to take a picture of this when I was in my 8th Air Force Pinks and Greens at the air show, and I had it on display in that shadow box with all the other little personal effects, and it got a lot of attention, of course, from the gals. So Yeah, I really appreciate
It
it,
was
man.
a weird color. It's for those of you at home and listening. It's a lavender handkerchief with white edging, almost like you would see on a lamp doily. Um,
Yeah.
and it has the 8th Air Corps logo embroidered on it, and it says "Greetings from England, 8th Air Corps." And I had been watching it for a few days on eBay because I go in there every once in a while, and I was like, "Oh, that's something Jeff would probably like." And then on not last week's redeployment episode, but on the last live episode, just like, "Oh, I'm collecting all things 8th Air Force," and so I literally went on there during the show and bought it. And the court, there's no written provenance, but according to the person selling it, it is original embroidered hand stitched handkerchief from England from the era, and you can tell it's hand stitched because anything that would have been done on machine, the embroidery would have been thicker, and you can it just has just enough imperfections. It was done by hand, but
Yeah.
it's very well preserved and it's pretty cool.
I
Nice.
love it, man. I really appreciate it. And then lastly, I did want to give a shout out to Liberty Jump Team. We're going to be talking with one of their guys next week. His name is Scott Freund. He's reached out to Henry before. And I had an opportunity. It's a shame I couldn't make it, but I had an opportunity, and I think Henry was afforded the same opportunity as well to speak at their training event here. I guess would have been next week or the week after. Um, and not only that, they were actually going to put me up in the C-47 right there by the door and
Nice.
watch these guys as they're coming out, as they're jumping. Would have been really cool. So there was about 7 of them there. They set up in the museum, kind of along that brick wall, that 8th Air Force feature wall that I've just recently built. So they had a great display, really, really hospitable. And so they presented me with a really slick. Their coin is incredible. You can see it says Normandy there on the blade. And,
Nice.
it's a really well done coin. I got I've got a ton of these coins through the years, and that's a really nice one. Stands out really, really nice of them to do that. And the good thing about I can't go and I can't speak, but somebody can and will, and it's the guy I'm working with to tell his uncle's story, who was a Pathfinder at D-Day. You guys have heard me mention we're going to make a small independent film here, a little short film, and then hopefully big production after that. And so he's going to have the opportunity to talk about his uncle, just being as he explains it, a poor black guy in 1943 that joins the Army and meets the girl he ends up marrying. She was also in the military. They meet up in England as he's training, and this is before D-Day. And he doesn't see her again until VE Day.
Wow.
They end up linking back up as he's redeploying and somehow reconnected. And so that's really cool. That lends, like you're saying with the Bombardment series, you kind of have to have a little human interest. You may have to create characters that didn't exist, but you got to have that human element in it. And this story is beautiful in that it has a human element in it. It's going to have a little bit of a love story because that's what happened. So I don't want to talk too much more about it, but I'm really looking forward to doing it. I think it's a great story, and I think our listeners will be, really interested to see as this project unfolds to learn about the Pathfinders and their key role in all the airborne drops in World War II. It's going to be a fun project.
And before we wrap it up, I want to give a special shout out to this person on Instagram who was tickled pink when we here at the What's the Scuttlebutt podcast followed them back on Instagram to the fact that they said they're trying to not scream in the middle of their office when they realized we were following them back. So shout out to reenacting_, yes, I know what an underscore is, reenacting_history_1940s. Thank you for making my day when I saw your post about how you were tickled pink that we followed you back. And you said, quote, my favorite podcast, not my favorite World War II podcast, but the people from my favorite podcast just followed me back, and I'm trying not to scream. So hopefully...
That's pretty cool.
Hopefully that made my day. Sometimes I think me, Jeff, and Henry, we think we're just doing this podcast for ourselves and no one listens. And so when we see things like that, or like Jeff said, I'm starting to get more and more people follow me on Instagram, it's like, oh wow, there are people who listen. And then when you actually hear somebody say in public that we're their favorite podcast with 2 million podcasts out there that we rank as their personal favorite, that just makes it all worth it. So shout out to you,
It's
good
really
sir.
special, man. I mean, I've had so many people. I want to do a picture trying to hold all of the books that our listeners have said, I have bought this book because of you talking about it. You know, I mean, it's incredible. It's incredible. Yeah.
Henry, do you get any upcoming events?
Last week I was on War Stories with Preston, and that will upload in like 3 or 4 weeks. They wanted to have a conversation about the Pacific War. We are supposed to do a part 3 of the We Happy Few 506 podcast with Saul David, but that we just did part 2. Part 1 was just with me. Part 3 will probably be like May, because Saul's book Devil Dogs will be coming out into the summer. You guys ever heard of Hardcore History with Dan Carlin?
Yes, I've actually had people strongly suggest it to me.
I've been having some email conversations with him. We're supposed to talk on the phone.
Nice.
He gave me a couple of dates, not to be on his show or anything,
Sure.
just when we can talk.
Yeah.
I've heard him talk about my dad's book quite a bit. I know he's a fan. So I'll give you more info on that when I get it. And then Jocko's assistant was emailing me Friday.
Jocko Willick. Fantastic.
Yeah. So we were supposed to talk Saturday, not like I was going to be on his show. Just he said, I'm trying to coordinate a conversation with you and Jocko Saturday. And then I was like, yeah, I'm available. And then I didn't hear any more. So hopefully that will happen. And you know how it works, guys. Whatever happens from that point, I'll keep you guys posted.
And before we wrap it up, as always, we just want to say thanks to our friends at Act Computers for sponsoring the What's the Scuttlebutt podcast, your favorite World War II based podcast. You can find more information on Act Computers at act-capecoral.com. They can help you with all your computer needs. Even if you don't live in Southwest Florida, they can help log in your computer remotely. And if you do live in Southwest Florida, give them a call at 239-283-1120. Or even if you don't, you can call them there. And they can help you with computer repair, networking, video cameras, pretty much anything tech related, they can help you. Give them a call at 239-283-1120. And as always, if you really want to help support the podcast, you can do so by going to WTSPWorldWar2.com. Click on that Patreon link, and it's $1 a month. We have 2 other plans. One of them's $3, the other one's $7.50, where you can get a free t-shirt. But we would be perfectly happy. And speaking of tickled pig, we'd be perfectly happy if you just sign up for $1 a month plan. And if you head over to WTSPWorldWar2.com, you can download all the archive episodes. You can see the photos. You can see the picture of Jeff's hanky that I bought him and his sweet ass challenge coin and all that good stuff. So on behalf of myself, Jeff Copsetta, and one Henry Sledge, we want to say thank you to each and every one of you who tune in every week. And furthermore, thanks and howdy do to all you new listeners. Our numbers are growing every week. And speaking of supporting the show, if you want to support the show without spending any financial contributions from your part, the biggest way to support the show is to share us with a like-minded friend, someone who's into World War II and the history, and just get the word out there. But until we see each other again next week, we will enjoy the rest of this week, and we hope you do too, and we will talk to you next week.
This has been a Digital 410 production.